I'm Joel Chandler. Welcome to another episode of Unsealed. In this limited podcast series, I take you behind the scenes for an unfiltered look at various open government projects that I've worked on in the past, projects that I'm currently working on, or projects that are still in the planning stage. We also discuss various issues that intersect with open government in Florida. Before we begin, I'm not an attorney. I am not qualified, nor am I authorized to give members of the public legal advice, so I don't. What I'm sharing in this episode is based on my own experiences working on open government issues here in Florida since 2008. Today we're diving into a project that started with a few simple questions and spiraled into a multi-year expedition through a bureaucratic labyrinth. This is the story of my charter school project, an attempt to bring a little daylight to Florida's sprawling and surprisingly opaque network of public charter schools. The story begins before December of 2023, when I started getting calls from one of the most unlikely coalitions you could imagine. These were people from completely different worlds, with different politics, different faiths, and different goals. They probably wouldn't agree on what to have for lunch, but they all wanted to know the same thing. What is really going on inside Florida's charter schools? First, there was an African-American minister and civil rights leader from a very poor community in Central Florida. His ministry runs a small private school for kids who likely pay little to no tuition. He'd see the massive amounts of public money flowing to charter schools and wonder, what are they doing with it all when we accomplish so much with so little? He was worried about resegregation and wanted to see budgets and demographic data. Then there was a group of public school advocates led by a retired attorney in Sarasota. They were concerned about the right-wing takeover of public education, especially with the influence of political organizations like Moms for Liberty in their community. Around the same time, I heard from students, parents, and alumni connected to a public liberal arts college that was undergoing a hostile political takeover. They saw connections between that movement and the charter school world. All of them, despite their different perspectives, believed public money was being used to pay for memberships in private associations and consortiums, and that's important. While Florida law allows public agencies to use public funds for dues, it also mandates that all records of the organization which pertain to that public agency are public records under Florida Statute Section 119.01 subsection 3. That means if public money pays for a membership, we get to see all the membership records, including listservs, message boards, and member forms. Many public officials don't realize those online chats are public record, and they tend to say stupid, unfiltered, and sometimes incriminating things. I've sourced news stories from those kinds of records. I've seen officials investigated and even convicted, all because they thought they were having a private chat. This unlikely coalition wanted me to get those records so they could see what was being said, and I agreed to help. After nearly 2 decades of wrangling public records, I thought this would be straightforward. I could not have been more wrong. Before I could ask for a single record, I hit the first wall. Who exactly are Florida's charter schools? If you go to the Florida Department of Education's website, you'll find a list of over 700 charter schools, but that number is a fantasy. The DOE lists campuses, not schools. Under Florida law, a public charter school isn't a building, it's a nonprofit corporation. That corporation is the legal entity that signs contracts and is subject to the Public Records Act and the Sunshine Law. So, the first job was to identify these corporations. I started by sending a public records request to all 67 school districts in Florida asking for just the first page of every charter contract. I wasn't trying to be a pest. I just needed the names of the parties on the contract. And the districts were cooperative, and soon I had a working list of corporate names. I ran each one through Sunbiz, Florida's corporate database, to find their annual reports, their officers, their registered agents, and their EINs. That's an employer identification number, like a social security number for a corporation. I was trying to build my own census of Florida charter schools, one that reflected reality. With my database in hand, I moved to the next step, finding each school's website to get the contact information for the custodian of public records. And that's when things got truly frustrating. Under Florida Statute 119.12, every public agency with a website is required to prominently post the contact information for their custodian of public records. The legislature put this in place as a protection for the agencies. If a requester doesn't use that contact information, the agency gets certain legal advantages if a lawsuit is filed. It's a get-out-of-jail-free card. Of the roughly 350 charter schools I identified, I would estimate that over 95% of them have decided to set that get-out-of-jail-free card on fire. The vast majority post nothing. No name, no email, no phone number, no acknowledgement that public records laws even apply to them. It makes it nearly impossible for the public to even know who to ask. So I did the only thing I could. I sent my request to the registered agents, the principals, the chairs of the governing boards, whoever I could find high on the food chain. And what was I asking for? Not nuclear launch codes. Just three simple things: the notice and minutes of their last annual meeting, of their most recent annual report, so I could confirm I had the right entity by comparing the EIN I already had from Sunbiz with their copy of their annual report, the notice and minutes from the meeting where that annual report was approved, and these are the most basic documents any functioning public agency should have. The compliance rate was spectacularly low. Many schools didn't respond at all. Some acknowledged the request and then ghosted me. I sent emails, faxes, first-class letters, certified letters, and eventually started sending every request via FedEx. The silence was deafening. By May of 2023, I knew the brick wall wasn't going to move on its own, so I tried a different tactic, diplomacy. I reached out to Braxton Paget, an attorney at the Arnold Law Firm, which represents a significant number of charter schools. I laid out the entire project. I told him I didn't want to sue anyone. I just wanted the records. I gave him a detailed list of every non-compliant school and told him he could share that list and our conversations with anyone he wanted. I believe my exact words were, "Shout it from the mountaintops." I offered to mediate for free through the Florida Attorney General's office. I offered to give written releases to any school that complied. I offered to meet anytime, anywhere, with anyone to avoid litigation. Later on in 2025, I even started sending his firm proactive lists of schools I was about to contact. I even offered to host a live podcast with him where any charter school official could call in and ask questions. And let me be clear, Braxton Paget has been a credit to his profession. If every agency had an attorney like him and actually listened to his advice, public records litigation would vanish overnight. But this isn't a one-lawyer problem. It's a systemic culture of noncompliance. By the way, and I realize this is a bit of a detour, but it's important. I've been involved with open government issues for almost 2 decades, and I've met and dealt with a lot of lawyers. In my considered opinion, most attorneys in Florida know very little about the Sunshine Law and the Public Records Act. That isn't a criticism. It's just an observation. And frankly, I don't expect them to know any more than I would expect your family doctor to know the finer details of brain surgery. It's not their area of practice. The problem is that some attorneys act like they know what they are talking about when it comes to open government law in Florida, when, in fact, they know very little. That's like your family doctor getting out a circular saw to work on your skull. The result is a big mess. There are only a handful of attorneys in Florida that seem to really understand the Sunshine Law and the Public Records Act. If you are a public official in Florida, you need to find one of them. So many of the messes I run across have been caused by public officials not knowing what they are supposed to do or getting horrible counsel from someone who has no idea what they're talking about. Inevitably, I had to sue some of these schools just to get these basic records. And during that litigation, through depositions and discovery, I found something much worse. This wasn't just about ignoring public records requests. Many of these schools were routinely violating Florida's Sunshine Law. They were holding meetings in private, making decisions behind closed doors, and then rubber stamping them later. I have deposition transcripts where school officials under oath describe how their board members discuss public business and take action without ever holding a public meeting. One official quipped, "That's just how we roll." And their attorney didn't even seem to register what was being said. Every decision they made that way isn't just improper, it's void, legally non-existent, as if it never happened. This isn't a technicality. It's the kind of thing that invalidates contracts, blows up budgets, and can get a school's charter revoked. It's an existential threat. When I started this, I was ambivalent about charter schools. For years, I've argued that the only way to fix public education is to let the money follow the student, make schools compete. I was a fan of school choice. This project has fundamentally changed my perspective. I still can't speak to the educational quality at most of these schools because 2 years later, I still don't have the records the project was designed to get. But what I can say, based on empirical evidence, is that as a group, charter schools are catastrophically bad at following the most basic laws governing their existence. Traditional public schools, for all their faults, largely take their transparency obligations seriously. They budget for it, they train for it. Charter schools, by and large, do not. So it is very clear to me that we are not comparing apples to apples. Those services, records management, public records access, and open meetings compliance, have a real dollars and cents cost that traditional public schools are paying, and charter schools are, for the most part, not. And those services matter a lot. Open government laws are designed to allow public oversight of public business. They are also a critical barrier to abuse of power. I'm not accusing anyone of abusing children. Let me be clear about that. But I want to be equally clear that many charter schools in Florida routinely violate the laws that help prevent waste, mismanagement, fraud, and abuse. When authority and power operate without transparency, really bad things happen. The more vulnerable the population, the more critical transparency is. If you have any doubts about that, just spend some time looking at what the state of Florida has done when dealing with vulnerable populations in the shadows. We're now well into 2025. This project should have been done by the end of 2023. Instead, it grinds on. This shouldn't be controversial. Complying with the law is not a favor, it's a duty. If you operate a Florida charter school, I want cooperation, not a lawsuit. I want your school to succeed transparently, but I can't work with institutions that treat basic legal compliance like an optional hobby. Access to public records and public meetings shouldn't require a trip to the courthouse. I'm Joel Chandler. Thank you for listening to another episode of Unsealed. Remember, the truth dies in the dark.